Yesterday, Joe Biden gave a speech where he argued that President Trump incites violence instead of stopping it. And instead of proving Biden wrong, Trump proved him right just a few hours later. Yes, we have seen peaceful protests across the country. Yes, we have seen violence erupt in some cities. And yes, we have seen the president try to paint all of it with the same brush. Why? Because it plays right into his hands. He knows that. That's why he tries to capitalize on it and why he tries to encourage it. Here he is describing Portland, Oregon.
Or a city like Portland, where the entire city is ablaze all the time.
No matter how many times the president watches Fox News loop video of a fire in Portland, this is nonsense. The local fire chief told CNN fact checker Daniel Dale that the city is not ablaze. And for the isolated pockets of fires that broke out during demonstrations, they've only needed one fire engine for them.
Portland's been burning for many years, for decades it's been burning. And I think the people of Portland, and they're tired of it. They're tired of of living with this curse.
Again, nonsense, but nonsense that is easy to peddle to a host who endlessly airs video from June of fires in Minneapolis or police standoffs in Seattle from July and tries to pass them off as if they happened in late August. If you watch her show, you would think Portland has been burning for years, but it hasn't been burning for years, let alone decades, as the president claims. Now listen to this, as Trump also spins lies about his record on crime.
Since the beginning of Operation Legend, we have conducted more than 1,000 arrests and reduced the murder rate in Kansas City, which is one of the cities we targeted, by 1/3, cut it down 33%.
That's completely made up. Murders have not declined 33% there, according to data obtained by the Kansas City Star. The city has recorded 135 homicides this year, putting it on track to be the deadliest year on record. There have been 32 homicides since the operation was announced in July. But as the president paints this picture of an out-of-control America, he acts like he's not already the president of it.
I'll appoint more tough-on-crime prosecutors, support stiffer penalties and longer jail terms for rioters, and support effective policing methods that are proven to be great crime reducers. When you enforce the law, order follows, and we need order. We need order. While I am president, we will defend the rights of law-abiding citizens. We will honor the heroes who keep America safe.
He is the president right now, and he has been for almost 3 years. The crime that he's deriding is happening on his watch. He's stoking it and using it successfully in many cases to make Americans afraid.
The violence is fueled by dangerous rhetoric from far-left politicians that demonize our nation and demonize our police.
When the rioters come for your town, and they're coming, will Biden and his team do enough to stop them?
These are thugs out there attacking law-abiding citizens.
Since these people are now crossing state lines clearly, and this is being organized using the internet,
they will burn down your cities and tell you that you did it. And if you don't accept that judgment, maybe they'll send BLM to your house.
That is a host saying that you should be afraid because black people might be coming to your house to commit violence. It's blatant racism. It's meant to scare moderate Americans into voting for President Trump. There's a standardized political reaction to violence, and it is to condemn it. And that's the route that Joe Biden took yesterday.
Let me be very clear about all of this. Rioting is not protesting. Looting is not protesting. Setting fires is not protesting. None of this is protesting. It's lawlessness, plain and simple. And those who do it should be prosecuted.
Instead of condemning violence, President Trump is endorsing it. Here is what he said about Portland, where a right-wing protester was shot and killed this weekend. He was part of a caravan of Trump supporters driving through the downtown protests, some of those supporters shooting paintballs and, according to a witness I interviewed, marbles from paintball guns.
You were just criticizing Joe Biden, saying he didn't mention the far left or Antifa. during his speech today, you said you wanted to talk about left-wing political violence.
Yeah.
But I noticed you did not mention that your supporters were also in Portland this weekend, firing paintball guns at people, some form of pepper spray. So do you want to also take this chance to condemn what your supporters did in
Well,
Portland?
I understand they had large numbers of people that were supporters, but that was a peaceful protest. And paint is a defensive mechanism.
Now, that death in Portland is not okay. The president, though, is greenlighting his supporters to show up at protests and shoot paintballs at protesters. He's saying that's peaceful behavior, but he's also greenlighting his supporters to show up with bullets. He is defending the 17-year-old in Kenosha, Wisconsin, who allegedly shot and killed 2 people with an AR-15 style gun and wounded a third.
That was an interesting situation. You saw the same tape as I saw. And he was trying to get away from them, I guess, it looks like. And he fell. And then they very violently attacked him. And it was something that we're looking at right now, and it's under investigation. But I guess he was in very big trouble. He would have been, he probably would have been killed, but it's under investigation.
According to police, that 17-year-old suspect in Kenosha allegedly shot someone, ran, and people from the crowd chased him. The president of the United States essentially is saying it's okay to take up arms without training or credentials or authority, go into the streets and act out a video game with protesters. But even if people are in the streets, breaking the law, rioting and looting, it is not the role of a private citizen to police them and to shoot them. That's not how the president of the United States sees it.
He immediately had to retreat from that area because the mob that was the rioters that were chasing him, who had witnessed this, immediately called him out for the shooting, which of course wasn't self-defense, but they called him out for the shooting.
That's the attorney for the suspect saying they called him out. Well, they is law enforcement. The shooter is now facing multiple homicide charges. And in New York City, the police commissioner is warning against bringing a gun to a protest like the shooter did in Kenosha.
Probably the last thing we would want to see here. Around the streets, I feel for my law enforcement brothers and sisters across the country dealing with that. And I would liken it to almost, Jim, it's a powder keg and throwing a match on. It's just so incredibly volatile already.
Calmer heads and leaders, the president is not either here. The president is arguing that he is the law and order candidate, but he clearly supports neither. He says he is the candidate who can combat violence, but he isn't against violence. He's against black violence. He's just fine with white violence, it appears. Joining me now is CNN contributor Miles Taylor. He served as chief of staff at the Department of Homeland Security under the Trump administration. He is supporting Joe Biden in November. Miles, when you hear what the president is saying, is it something that you worry could embolden people to take up arms against protesters and rioters, or do you think that people will be smart and they won't do that?
Well, thanks, Brianna. I mean, I would say this, it's beyond worry at this point. I think that the likeliest outcome is that the president's rhetoric will be hijacked by people for these reasons. And I'll go a step further. I talk to law enforcement officials that I used to serve with in the administration on an almost daily basis. They are very concerned behind the scenes about the president's rhetoric and its ability to fan the flames of further unrest. You had the police commissioner just say from New York that this is a powder keg. I likened it earlier today to the president arranging kindling with his words that will turn into a nationwide brush fire if Joe Biden wins. He's trying to set the stage for more unrest to show that, you know, he's the legitimate heir to a second term as president, even if he doesn't win it. This is very concerning. This is rhetoric we've never seen out of a modern president in U.S. history. So yes, law enforcement officials are concerned, and they should be, because we've already seen Donald Trump's rhetoric jump the tracks into violence in the past, and he's laying the groundwork for that in the near future.
Yeah, we haven't seen this from Democrats. We haven't seen this from Republicans. The president here is also continuing to push conspiracy theories, Miles. Let's listen to one that he floated during his interview with Fox News last night.
Who do you think is pulling Biden's strings? Is it former Obama
People
officials?
that you've never heard of.
people that are in the dark shadows, people that...
What does that mean? That sounds like conspiracy theory, dark shadows.
No,
What is
and
that?
people that you haven't heard of. They're people that are on the streets. They're people that are controlling the streets. We had somebody get on a plane from a certain city this weekend, and in the plane, it was almost completely loaded with thugs wearing these dark uniforms, black uniforms with gear and this and that. They're on a plane.
Where is this?
I'll tell you sometime, but it's under investigation right now. But they came from a certain city, and this person was coming to the Republican National Convention. And there were like 7 people on the plane like this person, and then a lot of people were on the plane to do big damage.
Do you have any idea what he's talking about, Miles?
No, Brianna. In fact, I asked people that I know at the White House today via secure message what the president was saying there. No one could give me a straight answer. I think the likeliest answer is the president has made this up or conflated information. But what's more alarming is that he's spreading it on national television. I think this also belays his explanations about QAnon. The president, of course, made statements that seem to be supportive of the QAnon conspiracy theory. These types of comments also contribute to that misinformation and disinformation out here. Look, at this point, I think a lot of us have given up hope, especially those who've served around the president, that he will correct this rhetoric and speak more responsibly. Now it's incumbent upon the people around the president to actually speak up. You saw Vice President Pence the other week have to deny the QAnon conspiracy theories. Well, people like the vice president and others in the cabinet are going to need to push back against this. If they don't, they will likewise be complicit in the civil unrest that we see around the country that the president's rhetoric generates.
I want to ask you specifically about Portland. The Department of Homeland Security's Acting Secretary Chad Wolf warned the mayor that if the unrest continues, the federal government will, quote, have no choice but to protect our American citizens. What might that mean? What are you concerned that might mean?
Yeah, I'll tell you up front, Brianna, my biggest concern there is that we have someone who runs the Department of Homeland Security indicating to state and local officials that they may send in the feds. Okay, that's traditionally not something that a Secretary of Homeland Security would say. Perhaps the president, perhaps the Attorney General, who's actually the nation's chief law enforcement officer. But DHS has historically been a nonpartisan law enforcement agency. So I think this is alarming. I think people should look at that letter. They should be concerned. They should be concerned about the signals being sent, but also the institutional implications here. Again, let's remind ourselves, DHS was built out of the rubble of 9/11 to prevent another terrorist attack and to protect Americans. It wasn't built to be the president's police force to send into communities. And I'll go a step further. The department actually has very limited authorities in that regard. Typically, if DHS law enforcement officers are going to go into a community, it's because they've been invited to or asked to by state and local officials. We are entering uncharted territory if the President of the United States is pressuring his Homeland Security Secretary to send in law enforcement officers into cities and towns around America. This is concerning, and it's, I think, foreboding about what might be to come in a second Donald Trump term.
Yeah. Miles Taylor, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brianna.
The president likening a police officer shooting a black man 7 times in the back to golfers missing a 3-foot putt. We'll have that ahead. Plus,